Word.
So welcome to today's featured artist interview. I'm here with two members of the Sunset Kings, Alistair and Neumi.
Yep. How's it
Hello,
going?
hello.
So just to kick things off, can you guys tell us about the background of the band and how you all got started?
Neumi, you want to take that one? You want me to start?
Yeah, sure. You can start off, and I'll add in.
So we were all playing jazz in university. I was a singer. Neumi was playing sax. And we actually met through we knew each other from like walking through the halls and like hanging out in the same places. I was also involved in poetry, so Neumi would show up to some of those poetry events that I'd put on. But we met through our guitarist Matt because they both studied music together. I wasn't a music major, so Matt brought Neumi to the house, and then we started all hanging out and playing music, and that's kind of how we started.
Yeah, no, it was pretty crazy. I was taking classes with Matt and Hannah, and basically, I had been working at the IT desk at my university, and Hannah worked there, and Matt and Hannah were dating, so he would come over often, and he's, his personality of being like a very like hyped person about music. We get into these conversations about music all the time. Then eventually he invited me over to come hang out with, like, oh yeah, I live with these other wonderful kooky characters who all play music, and you should come hang out, do a jam session, and like play. I hadn't been playing for that long, so I was obviously very scared of the idea of like, I have to play with these guys. Okay, so went down, visited. Long story short, I took up the opportunity despite being terrified, and we all jammed together. That first jam session, I probably had been playing saxophone for, I want to hazard a guess of like 4 months, but we really clicked and had good chemistry. So then we kept it going.
I had no idea. I didn't know you were playing for 4 months.
Yeah, it's crazy what fear and adrenaline will do.
So when it comes to band dynamics, a lot of people, when everybody's in the band is usually pretty good at what they do, but then it's also being able to mediate different personalities, making sure everyone's creative voice is heard. So how do you guys balance that?
We might have different perspectives. All of us have really different personalities. I think that something that's kept us together though is that, like, for the most part, we share like a lot of the same values. And if there's ever a hitch, like, we've always had conversations about it, but like what I'll start with, and then Neumi might take it in a different direction or like agree. I think that especially between me and Neumi over the past year, we've started to have a lot of conversations. We go on a lot of road trips together. Like, honestly, it's been me and Neumi a lot, going to New York and back to Boston. And just by virtue of being in the same car for hours and hours on end, we have tons of conversations about what we believe in, what we want to accomplish with our music. And we just put it on music, and then like he'll freestyle, and like I'll like sing, and then we'll like start writing together. So in that way, I think that the creative voice kind of develops naturally just from hanging out and being around each other and becoming comfortable with each other, and seeing how things fit together. So that's my take.
Yeah, honestly, a creative voice, all it really is, it's an acceptance of vulnerability. It's an ability to put yourself out there and be able to say, hey, I feel comfortable speaking my mind or letting my emotions loose, or my thoughts free. And the best way for us to have learned about each other, whether I'm talking about me and Alistair or the rest of the band, is that we have to spend time together. It's about having those rough conversations or the tough conversation of my point of view versus someone else's point of view. And then having the jokes and laughs and all of the everything in between. So a lot of those conversations definitely happen over road trips, over different opportunities where we just like, hey, this is where I'm at, and this is what I'm kind of thinking about, and what do you think about that? And it could be anywhere from wow, I really agree with that, I vibe with that, to like, I've never thought about that, to even like, that's really dumb, why I think this instead. And then just like laughing and having those exchanges. I'm very much a belief that in order to make good music, you have to be good people. You know, you have to learn about each other and then feel comfortable with the person you are socially with someone before you can ever sit down creatively. And thankfully, you know, we do that.
Definitely. Just to add to that, I feel like a lot of times that we've gone to shows and we've talked to people that are like way more, established in their careers. A lot of times I would be like, how did you get to this point? And like, how did you develop your artistry? And a lot of people say that like everything is practice, like washing the dishes, taking care of your pets, your dogs, your friends, like going out to the movies with people, like every single thing that you do when you make music or do any kind of art or even see your business as an art, everything is practice, because you're at the end of the day, all you're really trying to do is express and expand yourself into ways that people can communicate and connect with. So I mean, for us that's music, for everybody else that's something different.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's
I really
so much so. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
No, sorry. Go ahead.
I was about to divert the conversation,
Yeah.
so if you want to.
Gotcha. I guess just like just a quote to give that kind of sums it up for me. When it applies to anybody's passion is, for me, for Alistair, I would assume, and then for any musician is, music is what you are. Everything else is what you do.
That's deep. I like that.
That's pretty deep. I need scuba gear. That's pretty deep.
So, you guys mentioned freestyles. So I remember a couple months back, you went to a conference, taking our CTO Reese along.
Reese.
Yes, Reese.
Reese, what a beautiful human being.
He posted a video, like you guys are doing some sort of music video. Was that a freestyle?
Oh, right,
I don't know if you
right, yeah.
Kinda, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
man.
We kind of just, honestly, we just like to have fun. And like, I think that in the beginning of the band, we were just trying to make music, and we didn't realize where it would take us to. And going to like festivals and like going to shows and meeting people, literally the conversation shifted to like just how much joy can we have doing what we love to do. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, and injecting that joy into everything that we do. So like freestyles, like that music video that he posted, which is ridiculous. Like, it's just us trying to get away with as much as we can just by being who we are. Like, and honestly, all the people that saw us do those things had a lot of fun too. Like, we had so many conversations and made so many friends just by doing whatever weird stuff we were doing.
I think the fun thing about that video and like it's a bigger testament to the way we are in general is that I like to think that when it comes to what I do publicly, there has to be an aspect of, hopefully the entirety of me, but at least an aspect of me in all places. That video is a great example of that. Whether cameras are on or off, I'm just the same guy, like we have the same fun, we have the same, the same relationship. And as far as connections being made, it's a wonderful thing to sit down at a bed and breakfast. You're getting ready to have breakfast, and then someone who's one of your neighbors in one of the adjoining rooms to be like, "Was that you guys blasting Kids Bop?" and suddenly you have a conversation and you're making new friends. So I think it worked out well.
I think there's a stereotype too of like a lot of artists being unapproachable, and like that's not really us. Like, we kind of just want people to feel comfortable being themselves around us, and that's honestly how we write. Like, a lot of our writing is inspired by people that we meet and people who show themselves to us, and we show ourselves to other people. You can't really get to a deep level of writing, in my opinion, unless you're really seeing people for who they are. And I mean, we're not trying to intimidate people into like listening to our music. We're just around, being random and kooky, and I mean, Reese had an awesome time, I hope.
Yeah. Oh gosh,
we missed you, by the way. We were hoping you'd come too.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'd have other obligations to attend to.
It's all good.
Next time.
Yeah.
Hopefully, yeah.
So could you tell us a bit about your musical influences?
I mean, I feel like you should
Yeah.
start.
Okay, sure. So my musical influences, by and large, are kind of all over the place. I'd probably say that when it comes to strictly saxophone, it would come down to Miles Davis, John Coltrane. I mean, a lot of the saxophonists of the late great jazz era. I mean, even as far as Herbie Hancock, as well
Mhm.
as being like a primary like pianist, his harmony. Though outside of that, though, I grew up on hip hop and soul and punk music, and like a lot of like emo music. So I started off like from a place of knowing that music is a place to express. It's to let out emotions rather than to internalize them. So I've always carried that perspective with like anything I play and anything I do. Now I'd say that bigger influences would be like Snarky Puppy and Bob Reynolds, who is both my mentor and someone I look up to as like a guiding figure in saxophone musicianship. That they're the people who are kind of guiding my like the way I write now and the way I create now, plus a lot of lo-fi music.
Yeah. For me, I gotta be honest. I'm not really I'm not really a proactive music listener, and I never have been. Like the first albums I was listening to, I'd be in like this really crappy Buick with my brother. Like it's like a 1986 Regal Buick that I learned how to drive, but it had a cassette that was stuck in there and was called it was the Far Side, and we'd have that all the time playing, and he'd also have Beastie Boys playing, and so like the music that I grew up with was like a lot of that, like a lot of rock rap stuff. Um, Also like Jay Dilla instrumentals, and then honestly, everything that Neumi was talking about, I started getting into because just every single time we used to live together in the same house. A lot of
Mhm.
us still do, like the band still lives kind of together, but like something's happened, like people need their own space. But Snarky Puppy would always be playing.
Mhm.
I really love Bad Bad Not Good, Daniel Caesar,
Yes.
Jacob Collier. And as far as I'm like a piano player now, I I feel comfortable calling myself a piano player now. So like
Finally.
I really grew up with like Ahmad Jamal and
Mhm.
listening to Ahmad Jamal's trio. So like that's like that's where I start from. Every single time I got an idea, that's where I come from, and I just try and fit it in with what the band likes. I mean, Matt and Hannah, they like folk and rock, and somehow we make everything kind of work, gel it together. So
Yeah, your music is definitely eclectic. You can't really just pin it down. And I think also the fact that you have so many different kinds of instruments going on and working so well together is also a testament to the varying musical influences you guys have drawn from.
Mhm.
I feel
So
like that's just a testament to how much time we spend together.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
it's definitely a non-traditional mix. What made you guys know that it would work? Violinist, saxophonist, piano, and guitar, all of that together.
Honestly, my opinion is I think that I really depended on Matt's perspective of music, and that was that certain music, like certain instruments, fill certain spaces. Matt's really into composition and always kind of has
Mhm.
been, and so like I'm not gonna speak for him because obviously he's not here, but I really kind
Mhm.
of like dove into that idea and started listening to compositions myself, like um, and every instrument having its own space in terms of like I mean we can get really nerdy about it and talk about frequencies and like how like you would mix certain things, but like um if we're talking about it just like people who listen to music casually, like the fact that like my vocals and Numi's sax lines sometimes harmonize, and that sounds like its own thing. Sometimes it'll be the violin and the sax. Sometimes the guitar will do a line that the violin harmonizes with. Every single there's never it's not random, you know. Every all of us have a way. It's kind of the way I see it is it's kind of like playing basketball. People can play off of each other at any given time, and you have like X amount of space. And if you get really good at it, you can read where to throw your pass. You can read if you need to like put on a pick. Like there's just like things that you learn by being around the same musicians all the time. It's kind of like psychology, but I mean, I feel like Neumi might even explain it better.
No. I mean, that's pretty good. Honestly, that says a lot. That I was going to say. The only thing I add onto it is because me and Matt, we had a theory course that we took together. So a lot of our music theory in college is intertwined and mixed together. And one of the conversations we used to come back to a lot those times when I was hanging out at the university and at the IT desk was just talking about compositional theory. And the biggest part of that about compositional theory that we learned from our instructor was that every voice you have to treat it like it's another person, right? And so when you get music together and you get all these parts and you arrange these parts, it's an active conversation you're having between all these voices. So the same way how you can have someone take up a lot of space in a conversation, hopefully with what they're saying is meaningful, then you can have a lot of people who are still agreeing. You can still have people who are going, yes. You want to have that same idea of like when you really agree with something someone said, you won't just, immediately say a response. You repeat what they said because it left an impression on you. So the same thing we carried into our music, those conversations, whether it's me doing a sax line and I harmonize with the violin, it's like kind of saying like, oh, we're on the same page, and then if a certain lyric that's really powerful that suddenly, the guitar lines up with, that's because, hey, we both feel very strongly about this. There's those little moments that tug and pull of an active conversation, so that when you listen to our music, you're really hanging out with us rather than just coming to witness us.
I feel that.
And it makes it more intimate. It makes it more real to me, at least, and the reason why I love creating the music that we do.
So it's like humanizing the music in that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's one of the advantages that we have. Like, I think a lot of people are like, even us, like now, like when what we've been producing over quarantine has all been tracks. And like, I mean, you still have to go into the shop and work that out. How does a real band play that? And I think that's one advantage that we have. Like, not that no one else has a band, but that we all know each other and that we've known each other for so long that like we know how to work out those human dynamics. And like, we know when to play and when to like keep things, professional. It's like knowing the essence of the song and trying to maintain that.
So tell us a bit more about what you guys have been up to during quarantine music-wise. How's that work?
Well, between me and Neumi, we've been watching a lot of documentaries.
Yeah.
Not the Tiger King one, but we still make jokes about it, but we haven't actually watched it together. We only know it through memes. But we've watched a lot of music documentaries. I've watched the TLC documentary with Neumi like a couple times. I really love TLC. I've always loved them. And all my cousins are from Chicago, so like the music that I grew up with whenever I'd go and visit them was like TLC and like SWV. Like I love those girl groups. Like, and we've also we've been trying to grow our YouTube. So like up until a couple of weeks ago, we were posting something every single Sunday, and we're going to continue doing that. We have and then just like we'll produce together. We'll like share our screens, or like we'll get on FaceTime and we'll show each other what we're doing, and then we'll just record stuff and send it back and forth. So that's kind of how that works.
Yeah.
And Neumi, you got your own wave going on too, which has been cool to watch.
Yeah, it's just the same thing that like I feel it makes an impression when you have someone who motivates you. Like we're as much, close friends, best friends, as we are rivals. So whenever I see, whenever I see inspiration on the side of Alistair going, oh, hey, here's this new song I was working on, I get really inspired to be like, well, I got to work on something now. Like I get all this this sudden bubbling up of I have to write some new music. So I've been really trying to channel a lot of that internal voice, making sure I never wanted to stop having the conversation of music, even if I couldn't go out and play music with people. So I've been taking a lot of time to practice instruments that I never had a chance to. I've been working more on piano and bass and drums and saxophone, and trying to really get a better concrete idea of each instrument, so that when I play with other people who play those instruments, I can speak from a place of information, and I can have a more genuine conversation, because I know hey, I'm not just speaking as someone who's telling, hey, here's an idea for the drums. I can say I'm a drummer too, and I wrote recently, I wrote a little solo project, just some ideas, some musings from inside my room, some music I wrote. It's called Q in My Room. It's been really cool to have that up on Spotify and to have that produced somewhere. I've been having a lot of conversations about beat making and production with Alistair, and we've gotten into this habit of sending each other little snippets of ideas, whether it's I send him some piano parts or a sax line, he can send me a vocal line back, and we kind of just take that and we turn it into our own tracks, but using those little bass ideas from each other, which has been really cool.
Well, it's good to hear that you guys really been at it despite the distancing,
Yeah, and I mean, we're friends too, so that's our lifeline. So
yeah,
it's been pretty tough, honestly, because I'm in Texas, like I said earlier before the call started, and Neumi's up in Boston, and and it's pretty tough being in separate places, because we literally spend almost every day together.
Yeah, we're normally used to there's been countless times I've woken up and I'm used to maybe getting into a car with Alistair, and we go to Whole Foods, pick up something real quick, and then we're talking in the car, or jamming to some music, or oh, here's this new track and I want to show him, and I have to, now it's oh, here's this new track, I have to text this to him and he'll let me know what he thought of it when he checks it out, rather than sitting in the car and just getting a riff off of each other. But we make it work. It's not without its hardships, but our friendship, thankfully, is one that we made forge strong enough that we can at least deal with it.
I think that's something that all bands should aspire to.
All people should do it too.
Honestly.
I feel that.
So let's talk a little bit more about who you are behind the music. And I'd like to start with your style, because I noticed Neumi has his characteristic lenses on, and Alistair, you have your little hat. Those are tropes for you all, so just tell us about it.
Well, I'm actually bald underneath the hat, so that's why I'm wearing it. I mean, if we're really getting into it, music has always been about fashion. That's something that Neumi and I have been talking about for a long time. Every single, I mean, not as necessarily eclectic music, but every single movement of music has accompanied fashion, not because, they go in hand, because it's a cultural, thing. Music and fashion work together. Lucas Sabat, Virgil Abloh, Kanye West, that's just one, funnel that culture works its way through. But we also have Madonna and the LGBT movement. So I mean, for us, I mean, something that we talk about a lot is just being able to express ourselves as people of color, trying to navigate ourselves in the world. And I'm not what I'm trying to say by that is we can even go as deep as food. We have our own ways that we like food. We've talked about this when we were working with our friend Miyu. Music, fashion, food, conversations, all of that has its own spice to it. And I mean, really, that's kind of my whole thing. I'm not always wearing a hat, but spiritually or figuratively, I'm wearing a hat.
Yeah.
Even when I'm not wearing a hat, I'm wearing a hat. So
if it wasn't a hat, it might be a hoodie, or it might just be whatever we do to find our normalcy. I find that I my fashion is a reflection of what I grew up on. It's a lot of the cultures that I found cool as a kid, and also just like growing into adulthood, which is I think of traditional anime. I think of Japan and like neon lighting and cityscapes and like things like that. Like a lot of the 80s and the bright color dynamics, the contrasts of reds and blues and things like that.
Definitely.
And I even go as far as thinking about like the revolutionary cultural movements of like Odd Future, who they have their distinct style in line with counterculture, and then you have people like Fela Kuti, who have their styles because of their social, revolts and uprisings that they were doing in Africa. That like they very much so, the way you think and the way you want to appear and the way you want to express yourself, a part of that is how you look, and a part of that is how you dress and what you confidently dress as. So as much as like this is something I put on, I do shows with, I also like, this is how I dress. This is how I enjoy to express myself, and how I enjoy to speak. It's another statement about myself of saying I am, I'm here.
Definitely. I feel that. And I also feel like I'm not the type of person that goes to cosplays or anything like that, but even the existence of those, like, I think that it may seem superficial to people who don't really think about it, but like the way that we look at it is it's an extension of expression for ourselves. Like I feel if I'm not feeling like I can look at myself in the mirror and I feel like myself, like how am I going to go on stage, or how am I going to go and meet a person and authentically express myself? Like I even remember times like being a kid or like in middle school or high school, and I'd like look in the mirror and like I don't know if you've ever felt this, but there's moments where like I look in the mirror and it's like, man, I feel like ugly. All I want to do is go home. Like
Mm-hmm.
and you cut yourself off from like connecting with other people. So like if we're I mean we can go as deep as that. Like but I think everything that Neumi said was awesome. And honestly, having those conversations has been really helpful because we've started to work that aesthetic into our music. Like
Mm-hmm.
our new music is neon lights. It's the cities that we've been to. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
honestly, I'm really happy about what we're doing right now and where it's going to go. I feel like it's more authentically us than it has been in a while.
So before we jump into your new music, why don't you tell us, on the note of expression, like what does the platform of being an artist mean to you all?
Mm-hmm.
Great question.
You want me to take this one? All right. So first and foremost, I think that being an artist, or rather the platform expression for being an artist, is standing for something. I mean, at least for me, I know that the whole reason why I got into music, the whole reason why I ever picked up an instrument, was because it was the first time I felt like I was breathing for real. When I felt like I was living, and I felt like I was here and present, and I felt alive. So not going too deeply into like, how we come about finding our passions. But for me, it was a longer road and a later road than maybe some folks. But I transitioned out of something I wasn't really deeply passionate about, and doing a lot of, in that culture of that profession, you don't get a lot of opportunities to express and say how you feel. You get a lot of assumptions made out of you, made for you, about either how you look or who you are, where you come from. And getting to go into music, I wanted to be different. I wanted to always feel like I can be myself. I can cut out the middleman and just genuinely express. I don't have to worry about an assumption that's made about me. I can say, this is who I am, and this is my statement, and this is my character. And I'm bringing that version, that authentic version of myself, as authentic as I can be in any given situation. That platform of expression goes as far as, I've always used this example, saying that it's less about telling people, hey, look at me, I'm someone to wonder with, or whatever else. It's more so about connecting with people. I imagine the show, I don't necessarily go perform just for the idea of those stadiums or the idea of those platforms. I play thinking about whether it's that one person who's in the room who has had a really rough day. They're coming off of a really long day at work, or maybe they've had some like hardships happen. and they happen to be walking by this small bar, and they hear some music, and they come inside and they see my band performing, and they stop, they sit down on a stool, and they just like listen. Maybe it's one song, and for whatever reason, that song seems to really have an impact on them, and it turns around that day, and they feel a lot better about whatever they're going through, and it gives them a little bit of insight to carry that into their life. Maybe they never even have a conversation with me. Maybe they never stop to like, know who I am and know who my band is, but the song made an impression that leaves them with something that they can walk away with and learn from. That's my goal. That's why I express. That's why I do everything I do.
That's amazing. I love listening to that. I gotta follow that. So like for me, I've always kind of like, my favorite artist is Basquiat. And I remember reading about this thing that he said, and he was like, I remember he was painting, and he would listen to like these really hard hip hop records when he paint. And I remember he was having this conversation with one of his friends, and he said, if he could have chosen what to do, he wouldn't have been a painter. He would have been a musician, because that reaches a lot more people than painting does. And I mean, it's just funny because like these paintings are amazing. Honestly, I feel like they've changed my life in the way that I see the world. I kind of grew up on them. The first painting I saw was when I was like 10, and I'd never seen anything like it. And for me, being an artist is kind of like that. Like, it's like that conversation, the irony of saying like, oh, like I wish I could have been a musician because that connects with more people, but I'm a painter. Like, I always feel like every single person you meet has a way that they communicate and connect with other people. And that's what makes it so exhilarating to meet people. And I've had the honor of meeting a lot of people in my life. I moved out of my house at 17. I moved to California, and I made a great group of friends everywhere that I went. I mean, maybe it took time, but like, I mean, even with a band. And for me, being an artist is trying to be as present as possible so that I can take those experiences and those conversations and do right by them. Because I mean, Neumi will make a joke about this, but I don't see you, because you always do. I don't see myself as a musician. And every single time like someone comes up to me and they're like, you're a musician or you're a singer, I always try and correct them, and I say that I'm a writer, because that's what I've always been before music. And even deeper than that, like I found myself in the poetry community in Boston, and the way that I see my art is I like to think about my writing as being the poetry of the people that I'm around, like telling those stories. And for me, like, that's kind of what motivates me. I love to travel. I love to meet people. I love the small things, like the details, like being able to wake up in the same place, like with like Neumi or Matt, or like with my friends, or like my partner, and just being able to get in the car and drive somewhere or like walk somewhere, and just what conversations will you have because you were asleep in the same place, and you got to go out at 7 o'clock in the morning and you're half asleep and you have none of those walls up. Like, what conversations will you have? It's like when you go to a party and you're up way too late with people, and the conversations that happen after 3 a.m. with those people, like, you will never have those again, but they will stay with you for the rest of your life. And honestly, that's kind of the feeling that I want to give off when I write, and Neumi and I have talked about a lot. And so it's kind of become a cycle between us where we really try to bring that out of each other and out of the people that we come across. And yeah, I mean, as an artist, that's kind of the way that I see what we're doing.
Wow, you're a really cool person. Can we be friends? My gosh, jeez.
That's close. I almost dropped the ball after you said all that stuff.
Oh man.
I think you guys matched each other's energies. Like, same level, same height, same depth. Very
Nice. You still got it. You still got it. It's nice to know.
good. So the name Sunset Kings, how'd you all come up with that?
That was very specific. So like, and this was also, so I'm not even gonna go into like the drama of it, but like the drama being that there's another band there was another band that in North Carolina called the Sunset Kings that formed after us, I believe. And they came to Boston and tried to play one of our shows.
Oh, what?
So we actually have our name trademarked because it's like, but we came up with the name in 2015. I had just released a solo album and I just finished touring it, and things weren't working out in the place that I was staying in, so I was almost homeless. But Matt opened up the band house to me, and I was sleeping on the couch and we were jamming every single night. Like we'd sleep all morning and wake up 5, 6 in the afternoon and jam all night up until like 7 o'clock in the morning. And we started to move that into like, I was writing songs for artists that I was meeting, and I was like, hey, like we should start producing songs so that I can like cut demos for people. And I decided to call the group the Sunset Kings because I was like, we're up all night. We only play music at night, and that's kind of like when our energy comes out. And so like it moved from us cutting demos for other artists into like us playing our own music, and the name kind of stuck. And I mean, we have conversations about it, but it works.
Yeah.
Neumi and I are non-binary, and we've kind of gone on that. We kind of had those conversations after the band was formed. But I mean, there's Queens of the Stone Age.
Yeah.
Like the name isn't really all that it is. So
It's catchy. So
I hope so. I hope it is.
I mean, who knows? Maybe one day we'll rebrand as the Sunrise Queens, but that day will come when it comes.
All right. So why don't we get to your new music?
Let's do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, our inside is about to
goes on, but we can't show everything.
Not just yet.
That's one of the songs that we've been working on. Neumi and I would be trading lines in the car, and like that song kind of got birthed from some of those lines, and we've been sending it back and forth for I think a couple months, trying to get parts on it. So I'm pretty excited about sharing it.
So the sounds I heard at the beginning, were those dolphin or siren sounds? Or something completely different?
So that's a person who's playing guitar on this track is one of my friends, Brandon James, and his artist name is A World for You, and his signature sound is a reverse guitar coupled with like his guitar tone. And so like I took that, sampled it into an intro, and it sounds like dolphins. I mean, I'm not mad about it. Dolphins are intelligent beings. I almost call them intelligent human beings. Dolphins are intelligent. They have their own languages and stuff. So let's just call it dolphins. Those are dolphins in the intro.
It's gonna be it's a crazy process. Like what we've had, like how we'd had to reinvent the production process, since it's not me driving over to our our band's house
Right.
and setting up a microphone, playing sax, and like then joking and talking about different ways to arrange. It's more so sending a track, me recording some lines, sending the raw track over, sending it, and he looks at it, rearranges it, sends me back something. Like we can go through. We've been going through that process, but one cool thing I found from that is it's let me experiment a little bit more. In that, for example, fun fact about this track that people, when they hear the whole track, they'll get to know, I'm actually playing alto saxophone as opposed to my usual tenor saxophone. So
Oh yeah.
you'll hear
that's
some
true.
more, you'll hear some more like higher notes and a lot more vibrancy in a lot of the lines. I'm taking on a different role than I normally do with tenor saxophone, so it'll be just something to listen for. I find that it's given us a chance to experiment more, take it a different direction rather than just a traditional band like rehearsal setting. So I'm excited. I'm really happy with where the track has gone.
Definitely.
Do you want to talk about the premise of the like the meaning behind the lyrics a bit?
So honestly, I think we were just trying to capture. So we have this project that we were kind of embarking on lyrically called Songs About Touring, and we went on our first official tour as a band in 2018 into 2019, and we were touring with our friend Meumi, and we put out a song with her that's out on Spotify. It's called Come By. I'm sure you've heard it. So we really tried to capture the sound of what our tour was like in that song, and Songs About Touring takes it a little bit deeper. We're trying to kind of capture the feeling of just like being on the road, like meeting different people, and also dealing with a lot of the personal stuff that we were going through as friends and as a group. For us, like, I mean, I don't really want to talk about it too much because I think that the music will speak better for it, or will speak on behalf of us better. I don't know what I'm saying. But we lost a really good friend of ours who was the bassist in the band. And so our tour, our first official tour after we released our first album, was nothing like we thought it would be. That's why I hopped on the keys. Matt hopped on the bass instead of the guitar, and we had to reimagine our sound and also reimagine and redefine our friendships and the chemistry between us, because people grieve in different ways. And yeah, honestly, that is kind of what we have to contribute to the whole landscape of, like, people talk about touring all the time, but I think that something that a lot of artists don't get to talk about is that kind of grief, and still trying to remain ambitious in a society that wants us. I said society. Damn. In a society that wants us to remain productive, and is always having us chase, like we're indoctrinated with having to chase after like the shiniest things. And so us continuing to tour because, like, our manager was like, this is what you got to do. You just put out a record. It's time to tour this record. That's what you do. And you can't just stop because things get tough. Like, life happens. And I agree with that in some ways. And in other ways, I've learned a lot from all of us pushing and all of us really striving to become better at the same time as we were trying to deal with that grief and that loss.
Yeah, I think really what it came down to for like these songs about touring, also just like speaking to our touring experience, was that with the way popular culture is and how artists are represented, we are represented as two things. We're either represented as extremely positive icons who push a lot of like enthusiasm and positivity into the world, or we're represented as a fantasy infatuation with grief and negative emotion. They oftentimes, as artists, we speak to our trauma, we speak to our pain, and we say how we use that to keep creating. We use that to write passionately and how to how to let go of those pains through our music. And in a way, it creates this unhealthy relationship and association that we are more powerful, or we're more artistic or more expressive because we're in pain. And that's not always the case. I found that through touring and through kind of pushing through that very, very tough time after losing our bandmate was about learning how to be, a mixture of both, learning how to redefine what positivity means, what enthusiasm means, what optimism even means. At the same time, also being honest with yourself about the ways you have to take care of yourself, the ways you have to be honest about, negativity and grief and stress and how you're handling it and what you do to process those emotions. It's more than anything, I think that the touring experience, and like it comes through in that song, it comes through in a lot of other songs that we have planned, is that sometimes we want so desperately to put up a mask or a filter. We as artists, because we have to have a public face, right? I find that it's so much harder during those tough times to try and feel okay with that. That's one of the reasons why I can't really move in that way. I need to be genuine. I need to be able to be honest in some capacity. But I also know that sometimes you have to have a space for yourself too. Because I am a public figure, because we are a public, figure, we have to have our space to be able to grieve in our own ways. We can't expect everyone to be okay and just keep moving and keep pushing. Just like we can't expect everyone to want to stand still. Some people need that motion and that action.
Definitely.
So it was nice taking that time to figure that out with each other, being able to like redefine what our new comfort zones and our new lines of safety were.
Definitely. And honestly, I feel like that pressure that Neumi's talking about is why, all of like, we have a generation of people that struggle with like promiscuity, like drug abuse, all of this stuff that like, all of our communities are kind of struggling with, because when you're pressured to feel positive all the time and you're going through pain, like obviously you're gonna try and find ways to experience that joy. And kind of like we were saying earlier, a big part of like conceptually as artists, a big part of us learning all of this stuff was really figuring out like how can we tackle this issue of like feeling joy when you are in a state of pain. Like you shouldn't feel guilty for being happy or accomplishing things that you've set out to do, but that pain is always there, and it always kind of like it's on your back, like telling you like are you like worthy of this for real, or like have you given yourself time to heal? Like why should you be happy when other people are going through some things? And like it's way more complex than that, and I think that having those conversations and just knowing that there's people out there that are thinking about those things and really wrestling with those subjects, I think that that's really important for us moving on as a generation of people that are going through like all the stuff that we've had to struggle with.
Yeah, I think to at least like to give some honest vulnerability with, I know that a lot of times when we see our favorite artists, our favorite icons, we expect them to be better than us. We expect them to have more insight, to be in some ways without, with less fault and less human, because it's easier to latch onto that as a form of escape. Music is a great escape, to be able to get away from a lot of troubles and problems. But speaking from my own experience and just saying that, like, I'm no stranger to issues with alcohol or issues with smoking, specifically like with smoking weed. I don't know how kosher it is in certain places to say something like that, but I live in a legal state. So I know that during touring, there was this pressure to, because I'm a face. I'm very much so an attention drawer. I'm the person who I always feel like I have fun on stage. When I perform, I'm a very dynamic person, like I can't help it because that's the music I do. If I'm not laughing and I'm not smiling when I play, or I'm not passionately expressing when I play, then I'm not really playing. So I felt like the necessity was back then, before going through the experience of touring, was that expression I needed to have on stage had to be happy. had to be positive.
Yeah.
So, it started off just having to have a quick smoke before a show just to even myself out. And then it's accepting a couple drinks, from fans who are telling you like, oh, you did a great job, and just that way you can socialize a little bit easier, to turning into having to have a couple drinks and a couple drags before I start performing, and then a couple after, and it just spirals,
Yeah.
For me personally, and that's not to speak on everyone else's moderation or other control. I just know that struggle, that issue is very real to me, because at the time, that's what I did to cope. That's what I did to deal with grief, and everyone has their different ways. I'm sober now entirely, but that's what's worked for me to find a new sense of normal, because I'm not the same person I was before we lost our bandmate. I don't think anyone is, but who I am now, I am very happy with. I'm very happy with the music I'm making. I'm happy that I have a type of expression I can do, and like I can laugh twice as hard now, knowing that like I went through those experiences and I learned something about myself.
I really appreciate the authenticity that both of you are communicating, and I think a lot of people who watch this will, I think, gain a sense of just feeling like, there are other people who think deeply about these things and who go through these difficult times and, have gotten through them. It's never easy for anyone to lose someone who is close to them, and I think it's amazing that you guys were able to work together and get through that together, and then come out on the other side still strong and, still making great music.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate that.
So we're reaching the end of our interview.
Definitely.
Though, is there one final message that you'd like to share with our viewers?
Neumi, you got anything?
Yeah, definitely. Stay weird. Like, keep exploring that stuff that makes the most sense to you. It can be it can either be one side where you think that what you want to do is more mundane than what others do. Doesn't matter. Do it with everything you got. Do it with every bit of passion, every bit of hope, and every spark. If you want to do something really weird and eclectic, hopefully not illegal, then do that too. Invest in it. Like, change the world, or lay on your couch and feel like you had it enough and you just want to relax and take a day off. Either way, just be you genuinely as much as possible.
I feel that I can't really add anything to that. I totally agree.
All right, awesome. Thank you guys for your time today.
Thank you so much. Thank you, TuneHatch.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, great to talk to you.
See ya.
Catch you later.
Stay safe, y'all.